Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, I'm Audley Stevenson, and welcome to the most audacious podcast on the internet. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and if you're a returning listener, I say welcome back, and if you're a first time, I say thank you for being here, and I appreciate you taking a moment out of your day and tuning in to the Audacious Living Podcast as we continue our ongoing goal of helping you live your best audacious life ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. We are on Twitter and Instagram under the handle The Audacious Pod. And if you head over to Facebook and type in the search engine, The Audacious Living Podcast, you'll find us there as well. And if you happen to be watching the podcast on our YouTube channel, do know that you can subscribe to us on YouTube by clicking the notification bell below. So there's lots of options and lots of ways to stay connected to us. And certainly, like, follow, subscribe, phone a friend, share. There's lots of great ways to keep this conversation going and keep the community of audaciousness flowing and growing and thriving. We've got another great edition of the Audacious Living Podcast headed your way. And one of the topics we'll be discussing on this edition is, and we're going to focus a little bit more on the power of hope and optimism. So twofold. They're two different things, but still they work hand in hand and very important to us, especially to our daily living. I've got my good friend Imaad Rizvi joining me on the podcast. I'm really, really excited to have him on, and he'll do a great job in helping to expand the conversation further as we take a deep dive into how living in hope and having an optimistic mindset can benefit us. Imaad is a great guy, and he and I met over a decade ago when we both were working for the United Way of Peel. This is in Ontario, United Way of Peel, and helping them with their campaign. And we worked together. We had a great time. We did a lot of good stuff. And when our stint ended, we both essentially went on our own paths and our own separate journeys. And his journey took him back to Pakistan, where he was from, where he now works as a performance coach and helps individuals achieve their potential by recognizing the greatness that lies with all of them. He refers to himself as a serial optimist, and I'm going to get Imaad to explain that a bit further as well, because I think he really has some spot-on insights. He offers some awesome perspectives, and I'm really, really happy that he could join me on the podcast, and I'm confident that he'll leave listeners with a ton of good stuff. Truth be told, this is actually our second conversation, and because of some technical difficulties and issues that we had, we had to actually reconnect and basically redo the conversation. And in my opinion, I think the second conversation, as great as the first one was, and you'll have to take my word for it, but the second one was way better, and I'm actually glad that things happened the way they did. So without any further ado, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to hear from my friend Imaad Rizvi. Enjoy. Profound stuff. What will end up happening? We'll say some profound stuff. I'll go, I wish I pressed record, so I pressed record. But as I was saying, things just happen to fall into place, right? And there's a saying that I used to say a lot before. I'm going to bring it back. Is I don't have bad days, I have bad moments, right? And I don't let that situation kind of cloud the entire day and all the other stuff that possibly might be able to happen. So to answer your original question, I'm good, I'm blessed, I'm well, man.
Love it. I think that's the example of optimism and hope.
There you go.
I think combined. It's funny you say that. If you don't mind, I'll also share. I don't know if I expressed this to you last time, but when we think about life and the ups and downs, the undulations that we have, it's what I've experienced is that is part of life. And if you think about it, our heartbeat, if you ever look at the monogram or mammogram, it goes up and down, up and down. And if there are no ups and downs at the same time, then we're literally dead.
That's right. Yep.
Life has its ups and downs. It's what you do and how you respond to those times when you are down.
Hey, listen, I think it's a great illustration, a good example, because you don't want to be on that flat line, because you're right, you're not alive, you're not living. And in the moment it's hard, right, Imaad? Like, it's in the moment to be able to say, hey, these downs that you're experiencing, that's what you're supposed to go through. It's part of the journey, because they're just hard. Right? They're just not fun. They're hard. And when things are great and you're living in that moment, everything's exciting and everyone's having a good time, and you want to maintain that. So when you lose that, you're going, this isn't how it's supposed to be.
Exactly. Exactly. Could not agree more.
There we go. So we're for our listeners, we're doing this for the second time, right? We had some technical difficulties the first time around. Imaad, you've been kind enough to sit down with me again to do this again. And it's funny. I was thinking about, try to recreate a conversation. I'm not sure we can. So I'm just going to just kind of, go with what we know and see where it takes us, really. We touched on a little bit of optimism and hope. Optimism, I know, is a big sort of platform for you in terms of how you inspire your coaching clients and the individuals that you work with. So maybe I think that's a good starting point for the conversation when we talk about optimism. So maybe first off, give me your definition of when someone says, what's optimism? What is it to you, Imaad?
Beautiful. And before I even go there, let me just say, I think the angels above really like the fact that we get together, because that's called synergy. And I'm glad that there were technical difficulties. The fact is that we're back together again, man. It just makes me incredibly happy. Optimism is something that I've come to learn, come to live with. And I see that as part of life, no matter what, we're still moving forward. So if you're looking at optimism as a definition, it's really a belief in something better that's going to happen. It's not negating the fact that there's negativity around.
Right.
However, it's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And that is what gives us that spark. When we talk about optimism, personally speaking, if you see it in my own little title, I refer to myself as a serial optimist. And it can drive people crazy because, too much optimism is almost unrealistic. But like you said, I think earlier, it's yes, we have our bad moments. Yes, we have our bad days, but those days are teaching us something.
Yeah.
And it's our ability to see what it is trying to teach us. And you may not get the answer in the moment. It may come down the road at some point, be it a day, be it a month, but you've just got to let it go and still have that belief that something positive is going to come out of it. That's what keeps us driven, passionate, purposeful behind something, right? Yeah. But when I talk about optimism, I like to sort of dive into this idea. First, let's talk about what optimism is not.
Okay, sure.
And I've sort of alluded to it a little bit.
Yep.
And it's this idea that the world is perfect. Okay, it's not that. The world isn't perfect.
Right.
It's not the idea that, something bad isn't going to happen.
Right.
Optimism really is you seeing the potential or the possibilities of what can happen, and you making a conscious decision of going in that direction. Yeah. So I think for me, optimism is important. And what's really helped me is also being, how would you put it? Pragmatically pessimistic.
Gotcha.
And what that means is that pessimism has its place. But we've got to look at worst case scenarios of what potentially may happen. It only prepares us to take the right actions, to make the right decisions, to be conscious. Nothing's going to be perfect. No decision is going to be perfect.
Right.
But just knowing that, there's a potential of something coming down the road, but how do you handle it is important.
Yes.
So that to me is optimism.
And pessimism, it absolutely does have a place. I think it keeps us honest. It helps us. It keeps us accountable. It keeps our eyes open and alert to all that's going on. And so sometimes people view pessimism as a negative thing, and it's a bad thing. And it much like everything in the world, it has its place, right? Like some people think that rain is a bad thing, but rain is a good thing. It offers so much. So it's the same thing when those who are considered pessimistic.
Indeed, indeed. And I think we have to not drown ourselves in the pessimism,
Sure.
because then we don't see the light or the hope.
That's
but
right.
It's just preparing ourselves for worst case scenario.
You did say something that I want to key back on when you talked about optimism, and you said it was something that's learned. So yeah, and obviously, yes, there are people who have this, that's part of their DNA, and they're naturally optimistic, but it can be learned. You don't all, it's just because you don't have it doesn't mean you can never not have it, right?
110%.
Yeah.
We're all born unique. We're all born different. We're all born with our own gifts inside. And I often say that, and I'm sure you've heard it everywhere else, and I believe in it tremendously, is that we have the ability to rewire the way we operate. And we only do that through our actions, through our thoughts, through our behaviors, sort of on a daily, consistent basis.
Right.
And I think when you start to recognize something for what it is, and you start to put in the effort, only then do you start to be habitual in that. And ultimately, so for me, why it was such sort of a learned experience is because where I am now was definitely not what I saw 10 years ago, at least, even prior to that. I mean, I've been this avid athlete.
Yeah.
I've always had this aspiration of playing at a professional level.
Yep.
And unfortunately, on those journeys, for some reason or the other, be it external and my own failures on this journey, I've always put myself down, only because I didn't achieve what I had set myself out to. And it's just the miracle of life where, those lessons that we learn somehow come to an existence and a gift that emerges from within. Right. And I found that, and I'm so blessed to have found that. And that sort of gave the kick of optimism in me, and I've just built on it, really, to be honest, just every single day.
And you know what happens, Imaad, is that you'll go through a situation or a series of situations, and you can't make heads or tails of them. They make zero sense. You're going through them just because you have to. And when you get to the other side, you sort of look back and you're like, oh, wait a second. Now I can see where all the dots connected. And those are sorts of things can also fuel this optimistic spirit as well, because you're like, okay, now it makes sense. And really for me, it's about persevering and getting to the other side.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But I love your title of your show, which is the Audacious Living Podcast. You've got to be audacious enough to actually try. And I often, I'm a coach. I'm a performance coach. I think by profession now, loving what I do. And what I find is it's the simplest of things. And I termed, or I coined it, I don't know if it's actually a thing, but it's something that popped into my head, where simplicity is equal to significance. And really, if you really want to be significant in life, whatever you take that for, it's how simple the actions that we must take that's going to lead to where we need to be. I always give the golf example in that, where, it's about the millimeters. 1 millimeter just off by hitting the ball, and you're miles away. But you've got to start. You've got to start the process. Don't think too much about where you may end up or may not end up. Just think about how are you performing today.
Yes,
because this is the time.
Well, it is the little things, right? It's the little things that make the biggest difference. And sometimes I think what happens is we sort of overlook those small things because we don't see them as significant. But to your point, they very much are. They can't help us to get where we want to go, even if we don't know where we want to go, right?
100%, and that's exactly it. It's. I'm here today because of those small changes that actually took place. However, I didn't see it for what it was. And because I like to reflect on my past and what I've learned from it, I will tell you, things are starting to emerge because everything's recorded in our subconscious brain.
Yes.
You just have to access that file. And it's been a struggle in the beginning, but I think where I am now is things come up for me. And I think it's beautiful. And in this process, what I now see is being pragmatic,
Yes.
Pragmatically pessimistic, is really is really identifying, okay, what are the lessons that I can learn in the potential scenarios that may take place? And boy, it just changes my perspective on everything. And I think it's something that we have within us, we can do.
Yeah. I want to provide some context on what we're talking about here, and also tie in a little bit of your personal story as well, because and just for our listening audience, I mean, you and I met several years ago back when you came to Canada to work with the United Way. I was a volunteer speaker there, and that's how you and I connected. We disconnected, and you went back to Pakistan. And that's where you went through this whole sort of transformation. And I think there's some significance. And again, I think it feeds in directly to what we're talking about. So why don't you sort of kind of fill in some of the gaps there for those listeners?
Sure. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And I think the turning point for me was when I actually moved to Canada, which was back in 2009. It was 2 years off my inability or unfortunate luck, whatever you want to call it, of me not being a professional race car driver. And I had this ambition, had this aspiration. It just never came to fruition. And I was very, very down. Depressed might be a pretty harsh word for it, but I was very, very down that I wasn't able to achieve that.
Right.
And I think motorsports for me was the epitome of sports as in general. And I used to play basketball. I had the ambition of the NBA, and I used to play football. I wanted to play for the Arsenal Football Club back in the UK. But none of those things happened. And it's when I went to Canada that I discovered there was a turning point, I think, in the first few years. And I'm very grateful to United Way as an organization who gave me that opportunity as a newcomer to the country. And they didn't let me go. And I found my voice in my experience with the United Way. And as a result, I came to a crossroad in my life where, you know what, we ain't rewinding in time. We're only going ahead. And the impact that I was being able to contribute towards the United Way movement made me feel alive. And I just wanted to expand that reach. And knowing, because I'm 40 now, by the way, when I hit 40, it was almost like this eye opener where I could start to see 50, 60, 70. And I realized, you know what, if I don't make the change now. But there was a very profound question, actually, just to close, that I asked myself. This was 3 years into making the move back to Pakistan, was if I were to look back in this moment and regret not doing something, what is that something? And for me, immediately, it was go back to Pakistan. And here I am. It's been a brilliant journey. I do not have any regrets in life. And I think it's amazing that if you can do something, do it now. Otherwise, you might look back and say, I wish I did.
And that really is as simple as that question is that we can ask, that you ask yourself, that we can ask ourselves. It really is profound. It truly is, because it causes you to really reflect, it causes you to challenge, and it causes you to think beyond your present situation. And
100%.
And I think by doing all of those things, if you can come to the answer, if you can fit whatever that answer is, because it's going to be different for everyone. But when you come to that answer, if you can be okay with it or not okay with it, that, because that's kind of the impetus to take action. If you're okay with it, then you do something. If you're not okay with it, then you don't have to, or depend, vice versa. But the key is asking those simple questions, because they can lead to big differences.
And that's exactly it. Also scares you, by the way. And if it scares you, it means you're alive. But I'll also say that when you ask yourself that question, you'll find that not all the time will you succeed in that decision. You may be upset by the decision that you made, but I'll tell you something. In my experience and what I know of regret as a whole is you'll never regret failing at doing something that you wanted to do or try. The regret actually happens if you really don't know what happened.
That's right.
Or what you wished you had done.
That's right. No, that's actually a really good point too. Regret comes in when you don't know, right? If you try something and it didn't work out, at least you can say I tried. And that helps you realize, well, maybe this wasn't meant to be, although I thought I did. Because in our brains, we got all the answers, right? Our brains have all the answers. We've got it all figured out. Right? So in my brain, I thought I could do it, but I realized that I couldn't. So yeah, that's a good point.
But I want to also add to that now, because you actually reminded me of something, is, you know what, my encouragement to everybody is this, that if you make a decision to do something, do not change your decision immediately. Take your time with it. And no matter whether you fail or not, your failure is not a answer to you not being successful.
Right.
And I learned this from my grandmother, because she's a powerhouse in her own self. She talks about this word alternative. Okay. And she, if we got time, I can share with you a little story about her, because that's an inspiration that has led me to where I am.
Yes, please do.
So my grandmother, she experienced cancer many years ago. And then, of course, she had a relapse many years later. But in the first time that she had cancer, she was adamant that she is not going to get chemo done. And everybody had to talk her into getting chemo. And she was just, there's no way I'm going to get it done. You find a solution for me outside of chemo and I'll take it, but not chemo. It took a while. And eventually, I think there was a pill that she had to take consistently for 15 years. And she said, that's it. That's the one I want. And she did it. By God's blessing, she was alive, still is till this day. And she keeps narrating the story. And her famous line for me is, there's always an alternative. And what I see is, if you're failing, fail, learn from it, try it again. Yeah, there may come a point where you say, okay, enough is enough, but don't just give up hope because of a decision that you made. So be very slow to make a decision, and quick to act on it. Yeah. And just keep going.
Yeah, that's a great story, Imaad, because there always is another way. A piece around alternative, it always is there. Sometimes alternatives aren't great options, but other times the options take a bit more work. But the key is you don't necessarily have to settle. And that's what I love about the human spirit. I think we naturally are designed to want more and want beyond what we're present circumstances. I truly don't believe that we are meant to sit still and do nothing. Like, it's not. There's always more to be attained. There's always more to grasp. There's always more to reach for. And it's in that, in that simple phrase, there's always another option. I think that helps ignite that for us and really keeps us motivated to go after these things.
100%. I agree.
Yeah. The coming to Canada, going back to Pakistan rather, what did you see for yourself, or what was the vision going back to Pakistan for you?
So again, some folks might call me crazy, and I've been called crazy, because my vision is actually almost 500 years long. Okay. Because I don't believe that we can ever attain everything that we ever want in this life. It's what do we leave back and what do we leave behind, so that the next generation and the next generation after that can take forward. So for me, it's really about, am I doing what I need to do today? So coming back to Pakistan, I already was pretty clear about what I wanted to do. And that was this idea of performance coaching. I believed here in Pakistan that people had an immense amount of potential, just didn't know how to realize it, didn't know how to do anything with it. And how can you capitalize on something that we already have? So for me, it's going to be a long journey, but my vision for Pakistan is to be, a leading country on all fronts. And of course, I can get into more detail with that, but I'll refrain that for now. But for me, it's really to see people living effective lives with a clear sense of purpose and high levels of fulfillment. And we do it one day at a time. Yeah. So ever since I got here, of course, it was met with a lot of positivity, especially from the loved ones. But it also was met with negativity in the context of, my language of Urdu, which is the native language here, it's not very strong for me, to be honest. Okay. And a lot of people had their doubts, and they said, you have to learn the language. How are you going to communicate your message, et cetera, et cetera. And I was constantly put down, but it never killed my spirit, because I had a belief so strong that it made me push through. And I'll just give you a quick story to prove that. Anytime I go through an experience, I say, listen, the language that we speak is one form of communication. Right. And if you look at communication as a whole, 7% of what we speak, the words we use, is actually 7%. 93% is body language and how you use it.
Yes.
So I said, if that's a formula that's true, then why would I focus on the 7% that I'm not really good at and focus on the 93% that I am? And it got me to where I am. And I had a conversation with the lead trainer here in Pakistan, and he had the same view for me. He says, you're never going to make it here because nobody will ever understand you. And my response to him was, there's 200 million people in this country, and I don't think for a second that I'm going to impact every single one of them alone. However, do you believe in the message that I'm sharing with you? And he said, absolutely. I said, do you speak the language? He said, absolutely. I said, then why don't you go out and spread the word? So I said, I'm here for collaboration. I'm here to connect with people. I'm here to make this community, this country better than when I leave.
So the sense of community has to be strong in you in order to take that approach, right? Because if it doesn't, then you won't be able to move forward. That's
the thing. When I moved to Canada, I didn't see Pakistan in the same light that I saw it when I was there. So it's almost like, when you, if you really want to miss something, you got to let it go.
Yes.
That makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
But again, I didn't go to Canada with any, it was almost a forced exit from Pakistan because the situation back in 2008 wasn't very healthy. I had a 1-year-old son at the time, and, the situation here was just, pretty dreadful.
Right.
But then, over time, things started to get better over here. But as I started to discover myself and find who I am and what my gift was, I started to see Pakistan very, very differently. And I think seeing it through those eyes, nothing's changed. I mean, there's been improvements, but nothing's changed to the context of me wanting to run back over here. But I think because now I see what I want to see and what I wish to see, that's been the biggest driving force for me. And by the grace of God, I think it's the engagements that I've had over the past 3 years that I've been here has been tremendous. And I've got to say there's been growth. People are experiencing and executing on their potential. And it's just remarkable to see. And I think for me, every day is a blessing. Like you said in the beginning, it's a blessing to be alive. It's a blessing to sort of share not only my knowledge, but also help people realize their own gifts. And I think I'm living into my purpose, which is brilliant.
It's helping people unlock their gifts. It's a beautiful feeling, and I've been there when I've seen, and not that necessarily I've done it, but just help them recognize what they have inside of them. It's this, you see this, the light, this clouds open up, and it's such a beautiful existence to be a part of. Sort of talk about the work that you do and helping people understand their potential, because that really is a starting point to seeing, you're understanding your true self.
Right. So if we take the idea of potential as an example, do you believe that you have unlimited potential? I'm asking you.
I would say yes, I do. I feel like it.
So when you ask this question to many people, you'll get different and varying responses. And if you really dive deep into it, people will actually start to think, do I? The idea is that the potential that we believe we have will result in the actions that we take, which will then produce the results that we want to see. Wow. And what happens is the results that we see often may not be what we desire. However, that has a dampening effect on what we believe our potential to be. So what that means is recognizing a belief within you. Now, get this, within coaching, you can only coach someone to the limits of their beliefs, right? The minute you start to go beyond that, then you're starting to overstep a boundary that you do not want to get into. Right. And that's where we've got to master the art of coaching. So you've got to just get to the limits of their beliefs and then massage it in such a way that perhaps that they can see things perhaps differently. And everyone that I work with, there's no hard and fast rule to say, if you work with me for a month, you'll be a changed person.
Right.
The reality is everybody's at different levels of their life, okay? Not just in their age, but in their experience, in their life and everything else. And understanding people. And so when I talk to a lot of people, I always get the response that, oh, so you profile people. I said, no, I don't profile people. I study people. And I like to study people based on their body language, based on what the words they use, and so on and so forth. And I said, I can then determine, okay, what is the best course of action for them? Some people may have a massive transformation in a month or even in one conversation.
Yes.
Some people might have a transformation after a year, and that's okay. Everybody's sort of in their own journey, in their own race.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to recognize that don't beat yourself up just because somebody else is somewhere else.
Yes.
Dude, they're all running their own race, if you will.
Absolutely.
And you talked about this idea of comparison, right? And this is an unfortunate scenario where a lot of people like to make comparisons with others. Yes, we have our heroes, and I get that.
Yes.
However, there was a beautiful speech, Matthew McConaughey, who gave it, I think he won one of the awards, and he talked about, who's your hero? Somebody asked him, who's his hero? And he says, he had to come back, he had to think about it and come back to this person and answer. He says, my hero is me 10 years from now, right? And 10 years later, the same person asked him the same question. He says, no, not even close. I'm not even there. It's me 10 years from now. So the idea is it's somebody to, he looks forward to keep on chasing, somebody to keep on chasing. Yeah. And I think everybody has to recognize that we are our own individuals. Are you better than who you were yesterday?
Yeah.
And I like people because, I think I gave a talk on happiness some time back.
Okay.
Where does happiness reside? And thank you, because I'm going to make a post on this on Instagram now. Where does happiness resides on the opposite of complaining, on the other side of complaining?
Yes.
The more we complain, the less we see where happiness lies. And so as a sort of a performance coach, and I like to use the word performance because it's one particular niche or specific niche that I sort of identify with, where, when we think about performance and we think about people, there are high-performing people in this world, and you can always refer to an athlete or someone who's a great actor.
High achievers.
And high achievers. Thank you for that word. So when we think about performance, it's really a formula of a person's potential, i.e. the belief in themselves, the behavior that they execute, and then it's negating the interferences that are coming in their life.
Yes.
What I find is that there are a lot of barriers that people put upon them that then prevents them to see what's possible. Yes. And as a result, my whole idea is how do we first remove the interferences, remove the barriers so that they can see what they need to see, and then they can alter their behaviors to tap into the potential that they know they have, that we all believe that they have, right?
That's right.
Because we're coming to this world as, extraordinary beings, and we've been put in this world to give a gift that resides within you. But the challenge for you is you've got to find your gift. Make the effort.
Yes.
You don't make the effort, you don't get what you want.
You gotta start digging, right? You gotta dig because it's all there. And sometimes what happens is it's there in front of us, and that's why there's a value of having a trusted circle of people around you that you can talk with. Because from the outside, it's really easy. Like you can see what people have with them, whether they can't recognize themselves. And there's nothing wrong with even looking for that feedback or even just asking the question, because oftentimes the things that we do that are natural to us, we take them for granted.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think on that note, I think people have to recognize it's not just about asking the question. The point is, are you willing to hear the answer? And when the willingness to listen to what's about to come, because I'll be honest with you, man, even when you're engaging with people, you'll find more often than not, that a lot of people don't want to give their honest feedback in the fear of hurting your feelings.
Right.
So you've got to try and find that one or two people that really will be open, honest, and loving with you, enough to give you the truth.
Right.
And the question is, are you willing? And if you're not willing to receive it, don't ask.
That's a good point. It's a good point. A good point. That's why I was, I'd said a trusted circle of people, right? But yeah, absolutely. You've got it as much as you're that openness to accept what comes back in that's key. The belief piece, I want to just touch on that as well, because the belief, in my viewpoint, is really the foundation of everything that moves forward. You can't move forward without that belief that, either you've got the potential to do great things, or, you can achieve wonderful, remarkable achievements. The belief piece has to be there. For those struggling with the belief, of believing in themselves. How do you get that kick started, or what things would you suggest to help there?
Well, even before you even tap into belief in any conversation that you have, because like I mentioned earlier, it's something that you don't want to really penetrate because it's hard. It's really understanding the backstory of the individual, right? So our beliefs are usually formed in the first 7 years of our life.
Yes.
And as children, when we start to grow up, what we see, what we now know as the higher power, whatever your beliefs may be, I'm not going to go into that spectrum, but whatever your beliefs may be, they're usually formed from our parents, right? And it's no matter what they do, it'll always be deemed right. Okay, gotcha. It could be something negative, it could be something positive, whatever it is. You start to pick up on those things, and then you reach a point where you start thinking for yourself, and then oftentimes your beliefs will be challenged in various circumstances.
Yes.
So you got to know the backstory first, and then start working your way up. Very often, like you said, we are the expert of everybody's life. That's the definition of opinions, and everybody's got one. And you know, your opinions are only based upon the experiences that you as an individual have had, and then you can sort of put it forward. But we truly aren't empathetic to the people that we are engaging. Right. So when it comes to trying to change and alter people's beliefs, and I'll give you, and forgive me if this gets a little lengthy, because I think it's very, very powerful. That our behaviors, right? Our behaviors are the output that everybody sees, that we are aware of, that people see, and then they will have a response, good, bad, or ugly.
Yes.
But where do our behaviors come from? Our behavior literally comes from our emotions. Our emotions. If we're angry and feeling angry about something, that triggers a certain behavior. If we're excited, it triggers a certain behavior. So it'll always come out through that. Where do our emotions come from? It comes from our thought process.
Yes.
And what we think triggers our emotions, which ultimately is demonstrated in our behavior.
Yes.
Now, where do our thoughts come from? Our thoughts come from our beliefs. And our beliefs are those foundational pieces that are built within us in our formative years, of course. And then over time, we start to learn a few other
experiences in life,
and experiences is exactly where beliefs are formed. Now, so if you're looking at changing and altering others' beliefs, now I'm not talking about the spiritual beliefs. I'm talking about the belief in yourself, the belief in all of that. You've got to start giving experiences that will help them see the change for themselves. Because if they believe a certain thing, that I'm not good enough, I'll give you an example of what I did, and it's very simple. So I gave a talk to about 12 students, and they had self-confidence issues, right? Also self-esteem. So there's a combination of both. And one of the challenges at the end of our 5-day engagement, I said, one of the things that you probably are fearful of is, you know, what do other people think of us? Because it's unfortunate, and it's part of life. I mean, if you get one F grade and everything else is A grades in your school, then everybody wants to focus on the F, not so much the A's.
Right.
In the same context, if you got a bunch of comments with positivity, but one negative, you'll drown in that.
Yes.
So I said, okay, I want you all for 1 minute to speak about yourself. That's it. I want you to do that, and you're going to do it on camera. Then you post it up on Instagram, and here's the caption. So I gave it to them. And I said, here's the caption you're going to write. And the caption read something like, and it was many years ago, so something like, this is my first time posting on social media where I'm having the courage enough to speak. I would really love your honest feedback. And then I closed it. And once it was closed, I said, now we'll come back to it at the end of the day. And when they opened it at the end of the day, they had the most views, the most positivity in terms of messages. And I said, listen, there's more love in this world than there is hate. So let's just embrace that fact. And unfortunately, we gravitate towards the hate because that's just exactly where it's easy. So if you want to change people's beliefs, you've got to give them new experiences. You see my point?
That's a fabulous illustration, because it's not good enough to say you need to believe this now. Your words will not do it at all. It's
a great litmus test to that. Sorry, I'm cutting you off, but a great litmus test to that is try it with your children. You know, you got young children. If you've got young children and you're watching this, try it with your children. And what you will find is that they believe something. based on our parents' behaviors, right?
Yes.
And once they have that belief and they do what you don't want them to do, they're going to hold you. They're going to challenge you. They come into this world to cause chaos. And oh boy, if they don't teach you something, nobody else will.
Yeah, no, that's it. And that's it. That's exactly it. I mean, children are great for that. And again, the belief is strong, and the belief fuels so much. Our greatest achievements and accomplishments start with our belief, because, you think of any great invention, the Wright brothers trying to fly a plane. I'm sure a lot of people told them that they were crazy and that what are they wasting their time, but their belief is what fueled them to go on and do great things. And so it starts with the belief, my man.
Yeah. And not just taking other people's opinions for what it is.
Yeah. For sure. We talked the last time in our first chat. Unfortunately, our fans didn't get to hear. But one of the things that we talked about that really stood out in my mind is the power of energy and how we give energy to one another. And I absolutely wanted to revisit that with you, because there's so much that could be said in terms of how we inspire, how we impact other people, how we motivate them to do great things. And oftentimes that comes from the energy they pick up from us, not necessarily the words, because as we just said, our words aren't always going to do it. But it's the way they're made to feel by what we pass on. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
100%. And I don't think it's just the words that we use, it's the energy that we put out in our body language. Like I said, 93% is communication, is body language. There's a great phrase that I learned from my mentor, and it was, we are radiant exemplars. And that means that we as individuals, if we want to be the leader that we know we can be, we have to start exemplifying those characteristics, no matter whatever the outcome may be. But you want to put into this world what you want to get out of this world. There's no other way. We've done it the wrong way around, unfortunately, but we can change that. What's within our control is what we do. And if we can start to get a hold of that, then the more that we put into this world, the more that's going to come out of it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negativity that's going out, but we can't fight negative with negative in the same context. If I believe kindness is a superpower that we have, then you've got to put out kindness, whether the other person's kind or not, because inevitably that is going to start having a ripple effect.
Yes.
So we have to live into what we choose to see from this world. Yes. It's not the other way around. If the world doesn't give it to us, that shouldn't shake us to the core. And I'll tell you that we as human beings, if we are conditioned and controlled by external circumstances, we essentially become puppets to the environment. And we are not. We are human beings. We are the only creature on the face of this planet that has been bestowed with the word being. Being implies growth. Being implies abundance. Yes. And we have that ability. And if we are influenced by everything that's happening around us, then we have essentially given the remote control of our life to them. And we don't want them to press the stop button, pause button, play button, nothing.
No, not at all. We want to keep it going. And for me, it's oftentimes those little things, right? So you use kindness as an example. A smile, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort on our part, but it can have an impact on someone because we don't know what they're going through. We don't know what they're experiencing. And even for that brief second, right? I was talking earlier about, I don't have bad days. I have bad moments. Well, what if we create good moments for people by just those small things? That's profound.
Beautiful. 100%. And when we do these things, we have to eliminate expectation. And I think what we get where we perhaps may go wrong is that we expect others to respond in the same way. Don't expect it.
Right.
Do it from the goodness of your heart.
Yes.
The minute you feel you're expecting it, it ain't coming from your heart, and you're not exemplifying nothing.
Yes.
So you're right. It's a smile. It's just telling somebody looks nice today.
Yeah.
It's these little things. And when you make someone feel good, that energy is going to be transferred onto somebody else, and then somebody else, and then somebody else. And it's a ripple effect, right? Yeah. And just allow nature to take its course. That's what nature's for. Things will grow, things will change, sun goes up, sun goes down, birds fly.
That's right.
All these things happen. And we are essentially beings of nature. And if we don't learn from what's already around us, then we are doing ourselves disservice.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, Imaad, this is great. I think all of what we talked about really feeds in. Even if I go back to the core of the podcast, right? The podcast is about living that bold, audacious life. I think everything that we've touched on contributes and feeds into that. Sometimes people sort of think that, well, the audacious one is the most outgoing person in the room, or the one at the center of the attention, or the loudmouth, or what. And that's not it. Perhaps it could be part of it, but that's not what the core of it is. It's really about the impact we have on other people, and I think the points that we touched on, I think they feed into that and do exactly that, have impact.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, this has been good. For our listeners that wanted to learn more about you or catch up with your work or follow along, where can we send them, Imaad?
Well, I don't know how much of the work you're going to find online, I'll be honest. But I'm pretty engaged on Instagram, and I put up a lot of posts over there. But I'll tell you, with my Instagram feed, it's really about, I always put up stuff that resonates with me, that lessons that I have learned, and I put them into little texts. And if it hits home with someone, wonderful. If it doesn't, wonderful. Sure. I'm just doing it. It's almost my own selfish need, if you will. But I know that it sort of passes on messages, and I get feedback on different messages from different people about how that they needed to hear that today. So it's really just putting out the energy out there. And you can find me there at Imaad Rizvi. And you can also find me, I think, from a professional landscape as well on LinkedIn. And I have a website by www.imaadrizvi.com.
Awesome. Well, I would say first of all, thank you for being here. Thanks for chatting again. I don't know how many years went by, between gaps, but to know that a mistake, a technical issue can have us sitting back here and having another wonderful conversation. It's all good stuff. So thank you, Imaad. This is awesome. And I appreciate you, my man.
My pleasure. It's always fun. Secretly inside, there's a little part of me saying another technical glitch would be good.
I wouldn't be against it either, my friend.
Oh, you're such energy, my friend. Just keep doing what you're doing. I love it, and I think the world needs more of you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. We're all doing our part, so I would encourage you to keep doing the same. Back we are here on the podcast. Big shout out and thanks to my friend Imaad for being here on the Audacious Living podcast and spending time with me. It was great catching up with you, my friend, and I really appreciated your insights. I thought your perspectives were fantastic, and I really thank you for sharing. Imaad left us with so much to think about, but I think if there's one thing I take away from my conversation with him, it would be this. Being both optimistic and hopeful are important positive states of mind that are beneficial to our overall psychological well-being. There's absolutely no question about that. Being optimistic means that we're looking for that silver lining while acknowledging that the negative exists at the same time. So we're not ignoring that it's not there. We're acknowledging the negativity, but we're looking for the bright side. Whereas people who are hopeful live with this confidence that the thing that you want, it will happen. They definitely both have a place in our lives, and it's our job to tap into them and fall back in them and use them every opportunity we get. By choosing to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we're giving ourselves energy while creating a more peaceful, happier, calm state of mind. Hey, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. All you've got to do is enter in your email address and you will immediately be connected. I really, as we wind down this episode, I really want to take this opportunity to thank our incredible listeners, all lovers of audaciousness. You guys are fantastic. I appreciate all the great feedback, the comments, the direct messages, the likes. Really, the support has been tremendous, and so I take this opportunity to thank you, as I always do. Your support is fantastic, and it's appreciated, so I thank you. As we reach the end of another episode, I leave you, as I always do, when I say, until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.